A former Attorney-General of the Federation and his son have been arraigned before a federal high court over terrorism-related allegations. The case was brought by the Department of State Services and includes charges linked to terrorism financing and unlawful possession of firearms. Both defendants have pleaded not guilty, and the court has fixed a date to hear their bail application. This is a calm, fact-based analysis of what is confirmed so far, not opinion or judgment. The key question is, what exactly is the court dealing with, and what does this case mean within Nigeria's legal process? The Department of State Services arraigned Abubakar Malami, a former Attorney General of the Federation and Minister of Justice, alongside his son, Abdulaziz Abubakar Malami. The arraignment took place on Tuesday before the Federal High Court in Abuja. The case is before Justice Joyce Abdulmalik. The defendants are facing a 5-count charge filed by the DSS. According to the charge sheet, the allegations include terrorism financing, preparatory acts linked to terrorism, and unlawful possession of firearms and ammunition. The charges are brought under the Terrorism, Prevention and Prohibition Act, 2022, and the Firearms Act, 2004. The DSS alleged that, during his tenure as Attorney General between 2015 and 2023, Abubakar Malami knowingly failed to prosecute certain suspected terrorism financiers whose case files were forwarded to his office. The agency said this allegedly breached Section 26(2) of the Terrorism Act. The defendants were also accused of unlawful possession of firearms and ammunition. According to the DSS, the items were allegedly found at their residence in Jesse Phase 2, Birnin Kebbi local government area of Kebbi State in December 2025. Items listed in the charge include 1 Sturm Magnum 170101 firearm, 16 live rounds of ammunition, and 27 expended cartridges. The prosecution alleged that the possession was without the required licenses. Both Abubakar Malami and his son pleaded not guilty to all counts. Following the plea, the prosecution applied for their remand in DSS custody pending trial. The defense made an oral application for bail. The court declined to consider the oral request and adjourned the matter to February 20th for hearing of a formal bail application and possible commencement of trial. The allegations relate to actions said to have occurred during Abubakar Malami's tenure as Attorney General of the Federation between 2015 and 2023. According to the DSS, case files involving suspected terrorism financiers were forwarded to his office during that period. In December 2025, security operatives allegedly discovered firearms and ammunition at a residence linked to the defendants in Birnin Kebbi, Kebbi State. This discovery formed part of the basis for the charges. Following investigations, the DSS filed a 5-count charge against Malami and his son. They were arraigned before the Federal High Court in Abuja on Tuesday, February 3, 2026. At the arraignment, both defendants entered not guilty pleas. The prosecution applied for their remand, while the defense sought bail orally. The court declined the oral bail request and adjourned the case to February 20th. This sequence explains why the matter has now moved into open court and public attention. The core issue here is how terrorism-related laws are applied within Nigeria's legal system, especially when they involve former senior public officials. This case is not a finding of guilt, but a test of legal process and accountability. At the center of the allegations is the use of statutory powers and duties. The prosecution argues that actions or omissions while in public office can amount to terrorism-related offenses under existing law. The case also raises questions about the scope of the Terrorism, Prevention and Prohibition Act. Specifically, how nonviolent actions, such as alleged failure to prosecute, are treated under terrorism financing provisions. Beyond the individuals involved, the issue is institutional. It concerns prosecutorial discretion, legal responsibility of office holders, and the boundaries set by law. The court's role is to determine whether the charges meet legal standards and whether the evidence supports a trial. That process, rather than public reaction, is what defines the case at this stage. The immediate parties affected are the defendants, Abubakar Malami and his son, who are now subject to criminal trial and court supervision. The case also affects their legal rights, including bail, custody, and the conduct of their defense. The judiciary is directly involved. The Federal High Court must interpret terrorism and firearms laws and apply due process in a high-profile matter. Security and prosecutorial institutions are affected as well. The DSS is required to substantiate its allegations within the framework of the law. The legal profession and public office holders are indirectly affected. The case raises questions about accountability for actions taken while in public office. For the wider public, the impact is institutional trust. How this case is handled will influence confidence in the legal system and the application of terrorism-related laws. The charge sheet does not publicly detail the specific case files the DSS claims were not prosecuted. There is no information on the names or outcomes of the alleged terrorism financing cases involved. The DSS has not publicly explained how the alleged failure to prosecute directly meets the legal threshold for terrorism financing. Details of the evidence linking the alleged omission to preparatory acts of terrorism have not been made public. There is no clarification on how long the firearms and ammunition were allegedly in possession of the defendants. The circumstances surrounding the discovery of the items have not been fully outlined in open court. The court has not yet ruled on bail or the strength of the charges. These gaps reflect the early stage of the case, not conclusions about guilt or innocence. For ordinary Nigerians, this case highlights how terrorism-related laws can extend beyond direct acts of violence. It shows that actions taken or not taken while in public office can be subject to legal scrutiny. The case also affects public understanding of accountability. It raises questions about how senior officials are held responsible under existing laws. For citizens, the focus is on due process. The outcome will depend on what the court accepts as evidence and how the law is interpreted. It also touches on trust in institutions. How the courts and security agencies handle the case will shape public confidence in the justice system. In simple terms, the case shows how legal responsibility is tested through court process, not public opinion. Watch for the hearing scheduled for February 20th. The court will consider a formal bail application and may take further steps toward trial. Pay attention to whether the court grants or denies bail. That decision will shape how the case proceeds. Observe if the prosecution provides more detail on its evidence. This includes how the alleged actions fit within terrorism and firearms laws. Also watch for any preliminary rulings on jurisdiction or legal objections. These will indicate how the court intends to handle the case going forward. The arraignment of a former Attorney General and his son marks a significant moment in Nigeria's legal process. At this stage, the case is about allegations, legal interpretation, and due process, not conclusions. The core issue is how terrorism and firearms laws are applied and tested in court. So the key question remains, how will the court interpret these charges, and what standard of accountability will be set by the outcome of this case?